Hi there, it's Charlie here from Wood That I Could. I'm going to talk a little bit about sharpening chisels, which I've spent quite a lot of time doing over the last couple of days, mostly just to get used to using this, which is a honing guide which I bought from eBay for less than £5 including postage, and seems to work quite well. So the things I've got here are the honing guide, two different sorts of cutting paste, one coarse and one fine, a guide for setting the chisel in the honing guide, a coarse whetstone which I inherited, so I'm not quite sure what the grit is, but I think it's probably about 200, a fine whetstone which I think is probably about 400 grit, and a piece of leather glued onto a plank. So I'm going to zoom in with the camera and show you how this works and tell you how I've been doing it, and it's given me some reasonable results. Right, so I bought a new set of chisels, not expensive, £6 from Screwfix for a set of 3 different sizes, so I'll just run you through what I did with them to make them usable. To start off, you want to set the honing guide on the chisel like this, and try and get as close to possible as this surface here being flat on the bench or any other flat object, so that when you lock down the honing guide it's all locked in place, and as I said, this surface wants to be flat on that surface. So that's the right angle for these chisels, so you won't have to work too hard to make this surface flat. What I then did was to create this little guide for setting the chisel in the honing guide. So I just measured how far the chisel was sticking out from the guide. It's a little bit tricky. I'm making a mess of that. There we go. There we go. So if I just slacken that off so I can slide it backwards and forwards, so like that. So now I know that every time I sharpen these chisels I can get that angle exactly right, and it'll be totally flat on the whetstone. So you start like that, and then you want to go to work on the coarse whetstone. I'm not going to do this because they're all sharp and finished off now, but basically you'll see when you start grinding, you'll see that you'll leave marks. There'll be very regular machine marks on here when you buy the chisels new, and you'll gradually wear those away and replace them with marks from this stone. So the goal is to get rid of all the machine marks that are on here, so you know that you've got a completely flat surface if your stone is flat. So water, I use a spray bottle, so spray a bit of water on there and then go to work on it backwards and forwards, and you can just push down quite hard on this because obviously it's supported by this wheel at the back, which is great. So when you're happy that you've done that, you want to turn the chisel over and do the flat side. First time you do it, give it a good work over so that you know it's flat, and then give it a little wipe off. There we go. And then pop it back in the guide. Actually, you could have done this before you took it out of the guide. Pop it back in the guide. There we go. Tighten that up and give it a good go on the smooth stone. Backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. I did the cutting paste that I mentioned earlier. I used some coarse cutting paste on the coarse whetstone just to help me get these down because it was taking quite a long time. But you don't need that if you haven't got cutting paste. You don't need that. So when you've done this in the guide on there, if you look at the other side of this, it's going to put the chisel at a slightly different angle. And the idea of that is that along the front edge of the chisel here, you want what's known as a micro bevel. So you've got one angle here, up to about there, and then you've got sort of 1/2 mil of a slightly steeper angle. And that is achieved by just setting the honing guide so that the chisel is sticking out less far than it was for the first sharpening. And then you don't need the coarse stone for this, just the fine stone, and just give it a few rolls backwards and forwards and then wipe it off, and you'll be able to see, if you catch the light on the end of it, you'll be able to see that you've got your micro bevel there. So then this is just a block of wood which I've glued a piece of leather to, so the leather is shiny side up, as it were. And then you just want to take the burr off the chisel like this. This is I've actually rubbed some fine cutting paste into this, although just the leather will do the job quite well. And then just to polish it off, give it a wipe. And then this is what you're left with, and that's cutting across the grain. This is tulip wood, so it's quite hard. So for a set of £6 chisels, I think I've got quite a good edge on that. And I don't buy expensive chisels because they quite often end up going out on site with me, and I know they get destroyed. But if you sharpen them regularly, you can keep them in good condition, and they'll be perfectly usable for fine joinery as well as site applications. So that's the bits and pieces I've got to do that. As I said, this honing guide, bought from eBay for less than £5, and definitely well worth the money. The purists might say that you shouldn't use one, but just as a way of knowing that you're going to get the same result every time you sharpen your chisels, I think that's a great addition to any workshop. Thanks for watching.